fast. How are we coming through to you?
We sound good. We'll wait till we.
Okay, Mr. Bamber.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we?
Good.
Welcome to the monthly GDT meeting. Tonight, a big debate on RC's Paratransit services. Where do we go from here? We have Michael Doughty, who's not arrived yet.
Yes,
he's going to be a candidate for the Attorney General.
Yep.
And GDT member Austin drives a bus.
Woo!
We'll start with the news.
I'll let you take it away, sir.
And it's that monthly feature. So, GDT, so the lead's been thinking about the future. Our future is we've got to kind of start to get properly organised. We're starting to come up against, a few rules in terms of our political things, our event things, and we're starting to look at how do we bring GDT to be possibly something like that, which is an iOS C4. There's thoughts of C3, thoughts of how to restructure. So it's going to be a bit about how we sort of do things like bylaws, all these sort of governance documents that's going to hopefully keep us legal. Back last year, the GDT leadership team voted in principle to go from 5 leads to 7. And tonight we can announce that we filled those 2 positions. It's Cody Bryan. And here tonight, Sagapol. We have Emma, we have Joe with us.
June's running late.
June actually is running late. Hope she's not on RTD.
She's probably on a Brompton.
Okay. She's on the So, we are your GDT team, and let's hopefully have a good evening. Right, the news.
I'll do the fun part first.
There you
go. Okay, so how's everyone feeling about ridership trends back in June? Well, so the good news is, right, June of 24 was so much worse, right? We all remember what June of 24 was like on the light rail. Like, just not getting to work, 2.5 hour, one way on the E line just to get down to Bellevue. I was riding it at the time. So here's what we knew was going to happen, right? Light rail ridership is way up, and it's not like up above pre-pandemic, it's not above 22. This is just slightly more normalized ridership is what we're seeing. But unfortunately, the total system is still down, right? What we're seeing is bus as well, which is really concerning to us, given that, the bus system as a whole, right? There's so many different modes. There's coaches, there's local buses, but unfortunately, it just seemed like across the system, there wasn't any single driver to it. So, right, what we continue to see, unfortunately, is that the recovery continues to have stalled, and we are still trending down. I think this is the 7th or 8th consecutive month of ridership declines on a year-over-year basis, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's 7th. But anyway, so what we're continuing to see is, unfortunately, the impact of demand destruction. Of when you have the light rail system, the southern spine sick, this is what we get.
Do you think some of that bus growth we've seen over the last 6 months or so has sort of been a false growth of people switching from light rail, and now what we're seeing is them switching back? Do you think that's reasonable?
It's a really interesting theory. I think it probably depends on which route. So as someone who used to ride the E a lot, there wasn't really a good alternative to get from Union Station to like the northern part of the tech center from here. So substituting that with a bus would have been really, really tough. Other routes, totally maybe, especially in the Southwest, right?
Something like some D0 crossover.
Yeah, so very, very possibly. So we're keeping our eye on this. Even more interestingly enough though, this month, the operator shortage story has changed. Sorry, yes, Coleman?
We do have a question from the chat.
Oh, yes.
How do you guys get these ridership numbers?
The ridership numbers are published every month. It's usually a couple months behind. So June is the latest that we have. This is available if you look up, you just Google RTD board packets. You click on the main kind of landing page for that. There will be a, they now break these packets into like 8 or 10 pieces. There will be one called Ridership, and you will be able to find the data there.
I want to point out, to avoid any confusion, that the board briefing documents, of which this is a part, is a separate set of documents than what you would find in the agenda packet on the meeting website. So there's actually 2 places you need to go to get board info. One is the RTD, IQM, whatever meeting portal, and that has the agenda packets. But these numbers, safety and security numbers, other very consistent reporting metrics are in the board briefing documents page.
I will add to that something that you guys may not know, which is we are deprecating IQM at the end of the year and have already signed a contract for its replacement, which will roll out in the near term. It is much, much, much better, and one of the strong hopes that I have is that the board briefing documents will be included on the new webpage rather than the way it's been handled so far. So
if you're viewing the recording of this in 6 months, ignore everything I just said.
Well, thank you, Director Nicholson. Okay, so operator shortage, the story has changed. What we used to think was that the bus headcount was basically back to normal, was that RT, we thought, had the bus operators that they needed to operate normal service according to whatever the maximum budget they had for the time. That is no longer the case. So what has happened is that the numbers that we have seen up till now appear to have had almost 100 people of either retirees or trainees that do not count as full-time or part-time and are otherwise constrained from operating normal service that you would expect, right? If you're going to be looking at trying to get the 0 and the 15, and a lot of these very high ridership buses avoiding the cancellations, right? Unfortunately, we are way further off than we thought. So what's interesting is that the vacancy ratio actually is very similar between light rail and bus. They're about kind of 15% off where we're at right now. So unfortunately, this is not as positive of a story as we hoped, but I do appreciate the diligence of, if this is something that perhaps Kelly's team, we have a new CFO of RTD, we've got some new leadership who've come in. If this is something that they are trying to make the data more accurate, I would still applaud those efforts, because I think it's really important that we are getting an accurate story. So, mixed picture here. Paratransit.
Okay, first thing. Paratransit peer review, and I've put some quotes on it, is back very much at the top of the agenda now with RTD. So, quick recap, okay, Sundays, we'll go through. Basically, to use RTD's paratransit services, you have to be disabled. There is a limited amount of people. It's going. You must be, and also be so disabled you can't actually use one of the regular fixed route, which, remember, they have ramps and places for wheelchairs. You've got to be, it's not just everybody who has a disability. It's got to be a point where you've got to prove you can't use the regular fixed route transit. And also, at the moment, you've got to be in the district and live within 3/4 mile of a fixed route bus or rail stop. The basic service, which is federally mandated, is called Accessor Ride. This is important. We've got to follow along because these two terms are not interchangeable. Accessor Ride is the fully compliant door-to-door van service. Trips must be scheduled between 1 and 7 days in advance. So think about this, okay? We can just go and just pop down there and just get on a bus with no notice and change our mind. If you are disabled and use this service, you've got to figure out your travel arrangements 1 day at least in advance, okay? Which, does anybody do that like with their regular transport? No. There's also a 30-minute pickup window. They don't give you a special time. So you have to be ready perhaps an hour, 2 hours, something in advance. And then there's the fares, so they charge more than the regular bus fare. It's not exactly cheap. We moan about the train being $10. The ADA passengers here are paying $19 to go to the airport. So that's $38 return, and that's it. Okay. So very much some issues with the service, and it's quite expensive, and it costs something like, RTD is saying it's going to cost them $53.7 million to provide this service.
Just Accessor Ride.
Just the Accessor Ride service. A number of years ago, what RTD sort of figured out is they said not every disabled person, for example, blind people, need a fully accessible vehicle. They just need a bit of help, and they just need a vehicle that shows up pretty much door to door, so they can ride in the back of, say, a regular sedan car. So in-step providers, obviously Uber, Lyft, which is very familiar, and then there's Z-Trip, which are kind of like, they're a ride sharing company as well. They're kind of not very dominant in the American area, but in this area, but other parts of the US, they are actually used as a regular alternative Uber. And then, if you remember, one of our Denver's legacy cab companies, Metro Taxi. The idea being is you get 60 trips a month. RTD pays the first $25 of the fare, and then you pay whatever the rest. And here's the thing, I mean, suddenly, funny enough, Uber, we all love Uber, don't we, in a way? I mean, it's not, you know, we love the service, I guess. You know, it is convenient, it reassures you. You sound like you've got a bad experience with it. Well, the idea of this, you know, you can call a car and it's going to be there within 5 minutes and it's going to take you straight there. It's a wonderful idea. Funny enough, the disabled community who can use it love it. Okay. The only issue is it's not technically all accessible because it's run with regular sedan cars. RTD has taken to calling this a supplemental service, a premium service. We're kind of lucky we provide you its service at the moment. I don't get your expectations up, okay? And remember, this is not federally protected or mandated. The thing about Access on Demand is it's wildly cheaper, okay? And it's costing something like $22 a rider. We're hearing Access, the first one, Access a Ride, costs about $106 a disabled rider carried. So we have kind of these two services on the play. The federally mandated one that is difficult to use, is expensive, and then we have this, and then we have this kind of little upstart, which has now surpassed in ridership the original Access a Ride service. So RTD is wondering what to do. There is only one problem with Access on Demand. Anybody ever use multi-stop Uber? Yeah, know that? Okay. That's that idea where you've got, say you want to carry a friend, drop them at their house first, then you go back to yours, and you sort of do that. RTD has decided, if you just say, well, no, we can't use that. And this is kind of important because, you know, if you're just wanting to do a really quick errand, you want to just drop something off, you probably could be able to get in a more multi-stop to your house and back, or maybe you're dropping your child off and then going to your place of work, something like that. But RTD has decided that the disabled community says, please give us that back, and that's kind of their only real, you know, complaint versus what should they have for Access Right. Here's where we are. Okay. Basically, staff appear to have gone after the Access on Demand, so they've gone after the good one. The Access a Ride service got away with just some reporting requirements, but Access on Demand basically got a full review, reviewed everything to say financially sustainable, with the aim of originally cutting costs from 15 million to 10. The changes they sort of went out of what is the OSS, these things go through a committee, the Operation Safety and Security Committee. They kind of made it out of the committee. The full board had a load of amendments, decided this is nowhere ready, sent it back, okay? Then the OSS committee decided to come up with this proposal, which I know it's a little small, but the big one really here is a $650 upfront fare. So you would pay the first $650, then RTD would pay up to 20 or 25, and then you pay the rest. So if you're using this, the average fare, by the way, disabled people have been clocking up on this service is $18. So if you were, say, so you previously might have been riding to work for free, you're now hit with $13 a day. So if we do some math there, $65 a week, that's now $260 for your for your 4 weeks if you go to work for 20 days in a month. How much do you guys pay on RTD to get to work? Does anybody know? Come on, how much does it cost to get to work on RTD? For us guys, regulars.
$275 one way.
Yeah, in a month.
No, $88.
$88, right?
Free.
And it's free if you college, youth,
Free fare for youth.
free fare for youth, and if you qualify, if you've got low income, if you're low income, all that, you are paying $27 a month. Okay, so we're going to hit these Access on Demand riders with $260. Tell me, $260 in the month. Would that affect you? If I suddenly your cost went up by $260 a month on something, you'd be cutting back on something, and that's kind of the reality that is kind of on the table here. So I'm going to hand this over to Brian Gray, who is Chief Executive Director of the Atlantis community. Atlantis is kind of, they're the famous people who lay down all the buses. There's a fabulous documentary about the Gang of 19. I mean, these guys really did start off the disabled movement. I think we will do a showing of the documentary, but it's incredible stuff, and it's that was went on in the 80s to actually just be able to board a bus if you're disabled. It's absolute insane stuff that these guys did. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian to make a few remarks.
Well, thank you. The Gang of 19, it was July 5th and 6th of 1978. 19 individuals and their caretakers took over a bus right out at Broadway and Colfax, held it for 2 days, and what they were asking for is they wanted to be able to use the buses to get around town. And at the time they had 12 accessible buses out of a fleet of a couple hundred. And so effectively, like, you didn't know where the buses were, you couldn't get everywhere. And if you remember those buses back then, they were, the entrances and everything was really narrow and really steep. And so if you're in a big, 74-pound wheelchair, being lifted up even was a huge chore. But this is a topic that really does hit home. So we're located in the Baker neighborhood. We're off of Cherokee and Alameda, and we live in an area that consists of a lot of people with disabilities, a lot of people that are also low income, or low income and have disabilities. And we hear stories all the time about just being able to have to make choices between getting places, paying for medications, going to the doctor, eating. There's a large portion of the community that lives in our building that don't have things like a working phone or access to the internet that isn't provided by the actual apartment complex. And so when looking at these fares, like, there's no world in which they're going to choose a $13 trip when they can't literally use the phone unless they're on public Wi-Fi. And so when this was coming through, like, we had to say something, and we're not saying give it to us for free, but what we want to know is, like, what is the realistic cost and what is the realistic impact that we're having here? So the 0 to 650 change was pretty eye-opening. The $25 to $20 trip subsidy was also pretty opening. But the third one was the change of hours. Right now, people, and I don't know how, Chris Nicholson and I were just talking about this, we're not exactly sure how it works. But right now, like, my community can ride, like, if there's an emergency in the middle of the night, like, they can call and somebody's coming to pick them up. We have third shift workers all over the city that depend on this. And we actually have somebody who we've been working with who is gonna have to make a decision, because if they lose access to third shift transportation, they're gonna have to go to day shift, which is gonna reduce their pay by $2 an hour. And then it's going to cost them more because they're gonna spend $200+ a month trying to get from their home to the Amazon fulfillment center. And so these are real impacts that have hit our community. And what we're asking for is, we would love to see an actual independent, non-biased impact study done to say, like, what does this really look like? What is a realistic fare here? There was some costs that were interjected with the addition of weight vehicles, the wheelchair accessible vehicles, that we wanted to challenge, because does that get wrapped up into the cost of this program yearly? Is it a one-time cost? What's the maintenance? What's the sustainability of these products? But, like, it felt like the board, who I feel like was trying to be very responsible, was saying, hey, staff, you guys figured this out, and then not getting back the responses that we needed. And so we're asking, hey, don't change anything yet. Give us a little time, conduct the study, and then bring us back in so we can figure this out together. Like, we want to pay a fair rate, but right now it doesn't seem fair to pay 3 times what an able-bodied person pays, and it's not the same with Accessoride, because it is really a plan a day ahead, and if you have to cancel it, it counts against you. So we would do, like, I run an organization where everybody but one individual has a disability. I have multiple Accessoride users who come every single day. I have to call my snow days 24 hours in advance to give them enough time to cancel, when I have no idea what Denver weather is going to do. We've had to cancel, then we're looking outside and it's like 40 degrees. That's like, shit, what are we doing here? But that's the challenges that we run into, and we're not alone. There are dozens and dozens of companies that employ folks with disabilities that run into this, and it counts against them. We had an issue with a multi-stop that lost access for 2 weeks to one of my staff members, who then had to figure out, how do I get to work? So that's what we're asking. Is that fair?
Yep. Any question? Yes.
So what happens when you cancel? Like you said, it
If you
runs
don't
against you?
cancel within 24 hours, you get dinged. The first time, I think it's fine. The second time, you actually lose access. And so they penalize you by not doing it. And with access on demand, your first offense is 2 weeks, your second offense is 3 weeks, your fourth offense is 4 weeks, your fifth offense, you're done. And these aren't, like, I get it, right? Like, we don't want to waste people's time. It does cost money. But there are legitimate reasons. Like, if you call an Uber and you don't pick up, you get hit with a fine, but then they don't stop you from using their service. Like, we get put through some very strict regulations that we don't feel like is fair, and we just want some equity here.
So forgive my ignorance on this, but how does it work for paying for things if your employer has EcoPass? So like for me, like my employer, I'm lucky enough that they cover 100% the cost of my Archkey EcoPass. How does that work for these sorts of services?
Well, I think that they still, because there is a pass that you can purchase for Accessoride. Chris, do you know, is there anything EcoPass related to Access on Demand?
No.
Okay. So then we're just paying the, well, not paying in some cases, but I'll give you an example, like because it is $0 for the initial, and then you get the $25 subsidy. I have a staff member who lives up at 130th. We're at, like I said, Alameda and Cherokee. The other day she had to leave unexpectedly. And so she called, they came and picked her up. Didn't cost her anything for the initial fare, but she still went over the $25 by 11. And so she paid the 11, plus she tipped because she was worried, and it's a legitimate worry, that if you don't tip, like it's gonna get around, they're not gonna get picked up because drivers can decline rides. And so she tipped, and it was $13, $14 or something for the trip. With the new changes, that would have been, you know, $27, $28. Like, we paid pretty well, but it's not something that's sustainable for her. And I've had multiple, like, we had a situation where Accessoride canceled on one of my staff the other day. And so she switched over to Access on Demand. And like, that was great, but it was a 51-minute pickup. So we sit and wait with our staff while they get picked up. And we were downtown a few months back, and it was the same thing. Like, she was getting the Accessoride notifications, and they were supposed to be there at 4:30, and at 6:10 she got picked up. So much for a 30-minute window. So like, we don't complain a lot about this because we don't want these things to go away, but like, it's not equitable in the ways that it breaks down.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you think there's an opportunity, assuming that RTD will come back to you all and allow you to be a part of the conversation, do you think that having employers who rely on employees in the service could also help? Or will they be invited to come and basically lobby and let them know?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've told Chris this and I've told other board members, like, we would love to just have this conversation and talk about what our needs really look like and what the impact looks like. I hope that they would invite other employers to the table just to have this conversation, because there are different impacts depending on where you are in the city. But like, you know, when we talk about like losing jobs and things, like, I had a staff member who had to leave our organization because their trip was too long. Accessoride was over an hour every single day. They lived out east by Smith Road, and that was a real thing. And so they took a different job over in East Aurora that wasn't accommodating them. So I get the phone call like, hey, what's the likelihood if I want to come back? And we were like, we would love for you to come home. But here was the problem, like, I can't have them be remote because of the nature of the work we do. And so now they're put in a situation, do they go back to those really long commutes? Because it's two ways. So they work 8 hours a day for me, and then they have 2 hours on each end. That's a 12-hour day, 4 days a week. It was 5 days a week, but we switched to 4 to be more thoughtful of the people who are on Accessoride. So, but I hope so. And I think, you know, I think the board would encourage that too, and I hope Deborah Johnson would be open to that. But right now, like, the only communications that we've really had is that one of the other disability orgs has a transit specialist and a former board member, and he meets with the GM monthly, but the rest of us aren't really brought into that conversation. And so maybe that's something that we can create some more encouragement for.
Okay. We have, and we're always very honoured to join. We have a couple of RT directors in the room. You know, it is they that have to make the decision. We also have some hopeful directors in the room as well. So, if it's okay, I think if I'm looking around the room, we've got Director Nicholson, I see Director Rusha, Director Pagliari. Is he still there? He's over there. In any order, how would we say? Candidate.
You can just call me Jack.
Candidate Jack Rosenthal, Candidate Coleman. Have I missed anybody?
Well, I mean,
I do, of course.
already introduced technically, but you know.
Introduced, yes, he's got his fancy badges this week. So let's start with the current serving directors. You guys have to vote. It's coming up to a board meeting. Where are you at? Let's start with Director Nicholson.
So many of you have heard me talk about this in the meetings and you know, on Reddit and just in conversations. I think we do need to pass what the committee authorized. I worked very hard to help Director Harwick get that through the OSS committee. I believe it represents the closest compromise and sort of median of where the board is at the moment. I think there are two real concerns that are sort of driving why things look the way they do in this compromise. One is genuinely a pretty miserable 5-year financial forecast that is going to mean significant staff, you know, position cuts, possibly layoffs, and reductions across the board. And second, so a need to just overall reduce costs. And then second, there's an equity angle to it, because anything we do with the subsidy service, the rideshare service, the Uber and Lyft component of Access on Demand, we need to offer essentially the same thing to the individuals who have wheelchair accessible vehicles, is the position of staff. And so the challenge is any expansions we make of the service area, the hours, the fees, et cetera,
So you're going to vote no.
Right, that
Politely.
it ends up with significant potential increases in cost because they're functionally provided by two very different services. So those are the two constraints that we've been working with, and largely why we ended up where we have.
Okay.
Director Pagliari.
Yeah, this is by no means in my wheelhouse whatsoever. It has been a learning experience, kind of getting on the board, learning all about this, and getting to a point where I even begin to understand it is very complicated, right? And I think the board has been put in like a no-win situation here because the staff has very strong opinions about equity, and then the community is demanding something different. And it is not a good situation, basically. But like I am lacking understanding. I've been meeting with people. I've been trying to get my understanding up. So not to like not answer the question. Really, I'm gonna rely on the people on the board that have the expertise to know what to vote for. And will vote no if I don't have good enough understanding of this. Like hearing you speak is honestly a lot different than the complaints that I've heard over in my district. A lot of the complaints in my district are centered around the fact that they travel across town on access on demand, but they never use Access-a-Ride to do the same trip. And so it's a new service, and the agency has a very strong opinion right now. It presented to me that they want it, yeah, like Chris said, they want Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand. They don't want Access on Demand to be any better than Access-a-Ride, basically, for some reason, which doesn't really make sense. And yeah, and the fact that the fare is uneven is terrible. I think we can charge a fare, and I think there's a fair fare, but yeah, it's for lack of a better word, I would say it's kind of a shit show, and I have to apologize. So yeah, don't want the service to end abruptly. I think another concern though is at the rate it's growing, it is concerning how much capital it's consuming. And so establishing, I would love to just keep things as they are, but there is a concern, I believe, from the agency that it will continue to grow, and they don't. If you hit a hard cap and then everyone can't use it for like what 2 weeks until the next month, then money resets is a concern. But I think they have done enough financial forecasting, and we approved enough money for this year. But there's things that are not to be. There's still things to be understood. So yeah, that's my take on it. Thank you for the time to speak.
Serving Director, Dr. Rusha.
Hi, thanks for the question. I'm Joanne Rusha. I'm also on the board. So I am a no vote on the proposal, which is staff's version that went through OSS, for several reasons. Like, number one, our yearly paratransit costs have decreased year over year. So I don't buy that the house is on fire and this program is just bleeding us of money. That's the math just doesn't agree. The public record doesn't agree. Number two, I don't think it is ethically responsible for directors or the agency to be proposing, changes to programs that impact folks that use them without talking to folks that are impacted. And given that the agency declined to do a full impact study before making these recommendations, I'm not comfortable moving forward with those recommendations. And if I could just add another point for those who and to be really clear, most people don't live in the paratransit world. I don't use paratransit, but I've been working on this policy for several years, and with RTD. So the reason why we have on demand is because Access-a-Ride was on the struggle bus, and RTD said, let's take off some of that pressure and debut a new system to improve Access-a-Ride. They have done it a couple of times with other program changes. Like, for example, they completely replaced Call and Ride with On Demand. And if you look at staff's reports, which are publicly available, and meetings, again, publicly available information, staff called On Demand a success for years and months, and even recently. So this idea that all of a sudden we can't afford to spend less than what we've been spending for the last several years, and we need to make drastic changes that are going to drastically harm real people in our community, I just don't buy it. But again, I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier. We don't make changes about folks' lives without talking to those folks. And given that staff neglected to do a full impact study before they went forward with any of their versions of proposals, I don't think it's appropriate for the board to accept, decline, or move forward. We're okay with where we are. It's not draining the budget. We can take a time out and do it right. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So after hopeful directors, candidates, let's make it real quick. One sentence, yes or no. Jack.
I'd be a no vote. I can explain why.
One sentence.
One sentence. I think the disability community has been historically disadvantaged at every opportunity they've had in life. I think that the landscape that RTD presents in terms of services between Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand and what the fare structures are extremely confusing. I would love to see a future where we unify a lot of our accessibility services and bring them under a single fare structure, and we provide both scheduled and on-demand options, and we make the right call in terms of which vehicle we use to pick people up based on what we need in their account preferences, and do the right thing for the disability community.
Yeah, thank you. Colin?
I would definitely be a no vote. As far as my sentence, I would generally say that the Access on Demand program has been a success when it was introduced, and it has only gotten more successful. It may need reform, but this is not how we reform it.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
I would also be a no, because I don't think that the way that you fix the service you provide for people is to take one that seems to be working and go after that when you clearly have a service that is not performing and costing more money and causing a worse experience for people who rely on it. I think the staff resources and the study resources should have been focused on Access-a-Ride but there is still time to refocus it on accessory. And then in addition to that, acknowledging I'm not privy to all the documentation that the people actually on the board see, I haven't seen an argument that would hold up in my engineering world to back up a decision of this magnitude. I've yet to see that, yet to see numbers, yet to see this is the percentage of our population this serves, and this is the percentage of our budget we're willing to dedicate to that.
So, and then I guess just before we close on the topic, I just also from a political standpoint, Gene, obviously, so we've a lead of GDT who's very, very politically savvy and has done a lot of really important work in the past in shaping GDT's positions on stuff. What do you have any thoughts on whether the legislature itself might, if there was kind of, if this got loud enough, is there anything you could imagine them doing that would kind of direct RTD one way or another?
Well, they did run a paratransit bill last session, which ultimately a lot of got cut out of that bill. I think generally speaking, legislative intervention is justified when it's obvious that, well, like the legislature, basically the higher up you go in lawmaking, the less, I would say, specifically knowledgeable each legislator gets, like the less in the weeds they can get. So if something is truly going wrong with RTD that warrants state intervention, that's when it'll happen. Like if it's something that just stays within the board and it's honestly very detailed, very complicated, requires a lot of nuanced decision making, that's not necessarily the right place for something like the legislature to step in, because again, they've got a 4-month session. They're not all experts on paratransit. It's not always best to sort of use the cudgel of the state when a scalpel might do. So I'd say, given what's happening, I don't think there's a reason for the legislature to intervene right now. But like, let's say if costs were spiraling so out of control that it was affecting the rest of RTD's service offerings, or the board was so dysfunctional that, say for example, access to on-demand got cut entirely, or some other horribly controversial thing happened, that's when the legislature should step in. However, also if there are states, if there are statutes that are affecting the ability of RTD to deliver proper paratransit services, that's also when the state absolutely is the only entity that can step in, because, well, they write the laws. So if the law is in the way of providing proper paratransit, the state should step in. And otherwise, if it's just RTD operations determining it, it should frankly be the board taking care of it. And it's only truly when things get really bad that the legislature should step in, because it's not their job to micromanage RTD.
I think this has been a terrific conversation, by the way. So thanks to everyone. Thanks everyone.
It's going to be top of mind at the next board meeting. So please do, as ever, show up to the next board meeting. Have your say.
All right. So. Okay, so for many of you GDT members know, I am one of the governor's 6 appointees to the RTD Accountability Committee. We have had our first 2 meetings. We have a chair. Our chair is Maria Garcia Berry. There are a lot of restrictions that those of us who are operating on the committee have in terms of discussing committee materials outside of the committee. It's even more strict than RTD. So basically, it is open for the public to attend. There are invites that we can point you in the direction to if you're interested. What I can say is that we've got a few really important topics that we're going to be discussing. A lot of board governance subjects that were discussed in kind of the last legislative session, one I suppose 2 legislative sessions ago. Some of those points are going to be discussed. We have a governance expert who's going to be visiting Denver that we're going to be doing a ride along with on Sunday. I'll let Emma give you a few more of the details on that. But just we wanted to provide you all with the full list of those who are on the committee in addition to the governor's appointees, which were known during the last GDT meeting. I think a lot of familiar names to this group, right? Former Director Jamie Lewis, Lance Longenbahn, ATU president, but also some other really distinguished leaders from other parts of the district. As well, there was a question about who the youth appointee was. His name is Tobin Snook. And Tobin, please forgive me if I'm butchering your name. Tobin and I have not been able to get introduced yet. You would not believe the level of restrictions that we have in order to talk about the business of the committee. So I'm afraid I have to keep it mostly at that. If it is a structural question, I can probably answer it, Director.
Are you allowed to talk to other people on the committee?
No. So basically, the official restriction is that I am not allowed to talk to them about anything that could be committee business. I could hypothetically meet them in a social environment where we never talk about the committee, but just given how this was introduced, I think a lot of people are very nervous to do that. So one of the good news, piece of good news is that there has been some clarifications about how we can talk offline, getting some guidelines for that, shared areas. My understanding is that at our next meeting, we will have a little bit more information on that. But I would just encourage anyone here who's interested in this to attend, because they are open to the public. So
the first rule of Fight Club.
James, are they in person or virtual or hybrid? Is there a...
So most of them are going to be virtual. The next meeting is going to be in person, and it's going to be on Monday. So it's going to be, I believe, at the Denver Energy headquarters, really close to Civic Center, if I'm not mistaken. But the web, there will be a web version that will be available for any member of the public who's not able to come in person. So yeah, I believe.
Moving on. This is not Civic Centre. This is actually Boulder Junction, which finally reopened. It went into hibernation during the COVID. That's what I'm for. Brand new, you know, if you've forgotten what that is. That is the direct Civic Centre to Boulder Junction. Flatiron runs peak hours only. It's that along with what is now the AB2, which is the Express Skyride Denver Airport to Boulder jump, and that's about it. If you say pitch up there and want to actually go to Boulder, there are the bound and other buses on the thing, but they're up to a 2-block walk away. So great bus facility RTD. Let's get a connection sorted out since we're on that one. New advertising contracts. Remember, we're all cheering that Lamar have been sacked. Thanks for the directors for voting for that one. Go on. So we kind of got hold of the contract. Actually, it's not that exciting. You download the contracts and all documents from a website called OpenGov. So
this is the RFP. Just for those who are online, we're talking about the RFP.
This is, request proposal. So what RFP says is, we want a new advertising contract. They send it out. Any person who thinks that they could do this, okay, picks it up, downloads it, asks some questions. There's a whole process they're going through at the moment. Happens with any contract or any agency. RTD does this all the time. But what we noticed, of course, is we were flicking through the exact diagrams, and what we found out is this is your standard RTD transit bus. If you look that, we've said this before, the front window, for obvious reasons, front doors and the sort of the windows, the window the operator leans out to get trucker's elbow, the first side window there on the right, they get exempted. You then take the rest of the windows, that's including the ones that you guys see out, including the ones you have to look out to see if you're exiting the bus, what you're going to land in. And that said, up to, but not to exceed, 50% coverage of the total remaining square footage of all other windows. Now at the moment it's kind of, this bus is running around as 100, so we are halfway there. So remember that one RTD. Did a bit of a straw poll. Basically we want to go, we basically want to do this fully, don't we? So at the moment, we've heard Director Pagliari, he's on his phone.
Doing director business?
Are you, yeah, can we talk about Director Business in it?
Wait a second. I will be an annoying timekeeper. We need to keep things moving. We've got our wonderful DA Doherty in the room. We want to make sure we get some. Sorry.
So there is a resolution. So get on to your directors. You've got literally a few words.
Yeah, I can't say too much because I'm afraid of intervening in the contracting process, but there will be an amendment at the next board meeting on the 30th to change the advertisement policy to not allow advertisements on windows. So I encourage you to support that, please, if you like looking out the windows in the beautiful state of Colorado.
Okay. Right. This is quite good. Basically, there was a break-in. This is my local train station, 40th and Colorado. You can see two of the cars back. They did what? 20 cars?
2 dozen.
2 dozen.
2 dozen.
24.
Yep.
Okay. RTD were asked about this, and they said, because somebody went, "Where's the video? Where's the cameras?" And they said, "We don't have the power infrastructure." That's at a rail station which has, I don't know, lights, ticket machines, displays, 25,000 volts, but they do not have the power infrastructure. And we're just kind of wondering, well, what's that, for example? Moving on. Feel free to ask your director. Emma.
This is Sango.
Oh, Sango, sorry. His debut. How easy.
Just Burnham Yards.
Yeah, Burnham Yards, guys. Broncos Stadium is moving to Burnham Yards. Pretty big, exciting news. We are expecting some cool renderings, and I guess the Waltons are going to come out with a very fancy mixed-use entertainment district, very similar to the Conkeys. What's exciting for us is, this is obviously a space that's reserved for transit. There was hopes to take transit through here, and this is something we're going to keep pushing for. So if this is a topic that excites you, and you want to get involved in like how we can run rail, or whether that's the front range faster rail, whether that's heavy rail, all the way to the Broncos Stadium. So you can take the train from Boulder to the Broncos game. This is where you want to look. And if you're interested in like the long-term rail vision for Colorado, come chat with anyone here.
So I'd like to just offer, or put on the table that I'm an associate professor at CU Denver. And
would you say your name are you comfortable sharing your name with?
Yeah, Eugene Howard.
Eugene Howard.
And my spring semester, I'm in its graduate level course. I had my students create a master plan for a new mile high that just so happened to be at Burnham Yard. So,
I wonder if one of those designs inspired one of the Walton family hairs.
I tried to reach out to them. I couldn't quite get through, but clearly they were in negotiations at the time.
Right.
But anyway, if there's any interest, I'd be more than happy to either connect my students to anyone that would like to hear from them,
Yeah.
and I can certainly present their work as well.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. We should definitely shout out this.
Something to be proud of. Terrific. All right, so really, really fast updates from the western slope. We are looking at the inactive tracks of Tennessee Pass. Looking back toward Eagle County. So the Western Rail Coalition, which GDT is helping with, Mike Cowart, who is kind of the lead for the Leadville area, presented to Lake County officials. So for those of you who are regular attendees, you're aware that there is a Eagle County Rail Task Force that has been formed by Eagle County officials from various cities in Eagle County that are trying to look at how they can incrementally bring back rail on the northern part of the Tennessee Pass, which has been inactive since 1997. What was really cool about this meeting is that the questions that came from the officials were exceptionally positive and inquisitive. They were asking, well, how do we do this? What are the next steps? How do we work with Eagle County? How can we work with the lessee, the Rio Grande Pacific Railroad? And the meeting concluded with kind of a connection, right? Is that they are going to be signaling that they are interested in making this a bi-county initiative. Now we're going to have two counties with the resources of two counties working together to create a feasibility study. Mike knocked it out of the park. So Mike, if you're listening, thank you. As well, an opportunity for us that Emma is going to give you a little bit more detail about. We have the Union Depot of Grand Junction, which you see in this picture here. It's definitely seen better days, but it is a magnificent structure. Michael Nuttall, who is a kind of one of the leads for this organization that is trying to preserve and bring back this depot, are going to be asking for rail-friendly organizations across the state to write letters of support. So he's going to be asking, he's asking ColoRail, he's also asking Greater Denver Transit to write a letter in support. They are going after some local grant funding, and they believe that kind of state, letters from other states will help kind of bring urgency to this. So this is a fundraising opportunity that we are also going to have an opportunity to go see in person in a little over a month from now, which is really exciting that Emma's going to talk about. But just to use a Lord of the Rings reference for those of you who enjoy Lord of the Rings, Grand Junction calls for aid. All right, Emma.
Yeah, so we had our last night in the L line. A lot of friendly faces there you can see that are here tonight. That was end of August, and it's shutting down until I would say at least November 27th, being optimistic. LRTD. we had a great time, and yeah, hopefully we don't have to do it again. I'm sure we will. But Richard, that's where we go.
So unfortunately, the man of honor could not be with us. He is stuck back in his program in California.
Yeah. But anyway, the RCD, what they do, they have bus rodeo every year, which is mainly for staff, and GDT's been trying to get an invite for a while. I think finally RCD kind of relented and let them go on then. Anyway, this is Austin Ward. Who knows Austin? Woo! Who's Austin? Austin has entered the bus rodeo as a competition. Basically, for our RCD staff, it's open to the contractor Transdev staff as well. Austin, based out of Boulder, drives Flower Flyer, Broomfield City Council person, and if you need a contract bus driver, I think he is your man. Actually, he drives all sorts of excursions for Colorado and National.
He's a board member of Colorado.
And he's a board member of Colorado. Yep. So great sort of transit guide. Anyway, basically the bus rodeo, to enter it, first thing, rudimentary uniform check, which Austin, only very casual there really. Past that with flying colours, but it helps if you know the lady doing the tech check. Say no more. The next thing is the operators are given a defects inspection. There's basically one of these buses in the garage. Maintenance took 5 defects and 5 things wrong with the bus. The operators using their chaining have to find them in 5 minutes. So there's Austin, he's found something wrong with the wheel there. Can anybody very quickly see what's wrong with this bus?
Wiper.
That's actually pretty good, Jack, yes! Which you Wipers got. And Austin got that walking in the door, so he 5 out of 5. And then we get to the fun part, we get out on the course, and it's kind of the bus's slalom. There's Austin ready to go. There's a paratransit course as well. There's timing, he's doing a reverse on the right, and they measure how accurate you are. Points are obviously docked for losing cones, times, etc. And the final test is actually stop, accelerate the bus to 20 miles an hour, stop it on the line, they measure you, points docked for every inch you're behind the line. And, well, if you want to know how Austin did, he did, wait for it, second out of 60 Austin votes. So, well done to Austin, he can't be here tonight, but there you go. And then lastly in the sort of news section, that's Matt Larson. There he is, and we put him up there because it is his birthday today. So Matt, if you're listening, happy birthday. And now events, which is Emma.
Yeah, the board of directors meeting. We're having another one, shocking. That is going to be Tuesday, September the 30th at 5:30. Usual location, RTD headquarters downtown, 1660 Blake Street. Please show up around 5:15 outside so that we can organize our thoughts in case anyone's got redundant messaging, anything we need to polish, go over in recent news.
Also, if you just want a seat, because this is probably going to be exceptionally crowded.
That's true. This one should be pretty busy. And yeah, please speak on the recent Access on Demand program modifications. Monthly meetings, you're at one right now. It's 6 p.m. the 3rd Thursday of every month. Easy to make a Google Calendar to remind you. We're going to get drinks at Terminal Bar after, and our next meeting is the 16th next month at 6 p.m. Okay, some other stuff you should go to, FRPR. These are virtual. Next one's Friday, September 26th. That's not this Friday, the next, I believe, 9 a.m. I think it's on Zoom, right? You just dial in.
Yep.
The Inc. Transportation Committee, our very own Joel Noble leads these. 6 p.m. November 13th is the next one, so ways out, but keep it on your calendar. And then Denver City Council, these are always fun. Very lively, a lot goes on. You will not be bored. Alrighty, and then this Sunday, we have an RTD tour. That is being held by transit governance subject matter expert.
So we're actually hosting him. So this is David Bragdon. He is the lead advisor for governance issues on the RTD Accountability Committee. He is visiting from the East Coast. He flies in the afternoon of Sunday. So for those of you who are available, I'm going to lead a transit tour showing him some of the kind of bright spots and also challenging spots of RTD. So.
Yep, so that'll be a ton of fun. We're going to meet at Terminal Bar. 2:30 on the 21st.
That's his favorite time.
Cool, and GDT's big trip of the year, our Grand Junction trip, which was foreshadowed earlier, is coming up. So for most of you 9 to 5 Monday through Friday type workers, you will need to request 1 day off. So that'll be Friday, October the 24th.
Only if you want to ride the train. So basically the way that the logistics have come forward is that if you only have the weekend, you can't take any time off, taking the first or second bus staying on the West Line in the morning, we're going to get in. What's really important is that if you are interested, please go on your phone right now. Go onto Slack and please raise your hand. The hosts there need a head count because they're also trying to get some public officials to come as well from the Grand Junction area, and it gets easier for them if they've got a bigger showing from us. So we've told our friends at ColoRail about this. We've got a few Yimbys who are interested in this. So yeah, if you are sincerely interested in this, we can do it with a fairly affordable West Line ticket going out there, only 1 night in a hotel, and then coming back. So please raise your hand. We're going to give you more insights next week about what the hotels are going to cost, but this is going to be something really cool. I got to take a look at that, that station building, and it's a phenomenal project. So if you are interested, yes?
That happens to be the same weekend as APA, the Western Slope Conference, which is in Grand Junction. So you may want to reach out to folks at APA.
Okay. Yeah.
Because half of the metro area will be, or at least the planners, will be.
Yeah, that's a real, okay, so thank you for flagging that, because that was not on our radar, so thank you.
So I'm already going to get there.
All right, heck yeah.
But yeah, definitely let us know because we are trying to coordinate about hotels and stuff, and so if we get a head count, that'll also be easier in terms of pricing. But yeah, Gary?
I think we should note that ColoRail is pushing for train service to Grand Junction. The governor has focused on Steamboat Springs, but Grand Junction is a much more logical place to be spending state money to get more trains. And it's on the front page of our next upcoming newsletter.
Nice. Perfect. Cool. So
super fast.
No permanent funding. If you are new here, you've never been to a meeting before, don't worry about it. It's on us. If you're not new here and you did have pizza, please scan this. Venmo James, he is paying for it personally, and he is not made of money.
Also, an idea to keep us more on time to move projects to the end. Yeah, one more with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
so let's fire through this stuff. Oh, there we go. So I would like to announce and welcome Michael Dougherty, who is a candidate for Attorney General of Colorado tonight. We are going to be able to have some conversations about kind of where the intersection of the law and transit are. But first, Michael, welcome to GDT. And if you'd like to say a few words about your campaign and why you're running.
Don't forget it's DA now.
And DA, forgive me. But yes, welcome tonight. So,
thank you, James, and thank you so much, Greater Denver Transit, for allowing me to speak with you tonight. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm passionate about running for Attorney General because throughout my entire career, and I think this will resonate with you in this room, I've been committed to fighting for what's right, fixing what's broken, and building a better future. And when I think about transit and its impact on traffic, environment, workers, people with disabilities, I think we're united in that kind of approach. The problems that affect our community and our society. And for public transit, of which I've been a rider for many, many years throughout my career, I think we're at a critical time for Colorado. So I'm really excited to be with you tonight and to see Chris and Jack and James. I really appreciate you inviting me in. Thank you. And this is Joanne. When I came in, Joanne and I worked on our wage theft bill in 2019 together. And she described how there was this moment, she told it in a really dramatic way that I don't remember, to be honest, but about how I was stuck in traffic and I was trying to get to the Capitol. I had to get to the Capitol and ultimately got there and we got the wage theft bill passed. And I'm like, wow, that sounds much like my traffic experience just now coming here. So I'm really excited to talk to you because as your next Attorney General, I promise you I'll learn from you, support you, and work shoulder to shoulder with you to improve mass and public transit for all Coloradans.
So maybe, I guess, just to kick things off then, in your experience within the DA's office, where do you see kind of the law intersecting with transit? What are kind of the core areas in terms of whether it be crime, whether it be fines, that sort of thing? Where have you kind of touched transit in your career so far?
So I do believe that where the rule of law and transit intersect and what our priorities for me are on crime and public safety, environmental issues as well, and then issues around equity and development. And add to that list right now, given what the federal government is doing, I would say issues around immigrant protection, when people want to ride the public transit, but they're worried about getting taken by ICE if they're out there in public. And also, when you think about the federal government talking about rolling back plans for clean energy and high rail transport. So I would start with, if I may, with crime and public safety. And I'll tell you, when I was sitting in traffic, trying to get through the game day traffic, I'm just sitting on one of the streets over here, on the way down to Denver to talk with you. I saw 2 motorcycle cops go crashing up onto the sidewalk towards where 3 guys were sitting on the sidewalk with boxes and stuff. One of them jumped up and started running. Motorcycle cop grabbed them, looked like they were about to start scuffling. And then the guy started to break away and ran across my car, slammed the hood as he ran by, and took off and got away. And that's something, having grown up in New York and been a prosecutor in New York City for 13 years and throughout my entire career here, I wasn't particularly rattled by it. But when you think about the visitors and families who are coming down to see Rocky's game, and you think about the impact on them, and we see crime as it impacted transit in particular. So, for example, last year there were 3,592 calls for assistance by transit workers. From 2013 through 2021, there was a 120% increase in crime against transit workers. In 2024, there were 496 assaults against transit workers. As a prosecutor, I feel really passionate about us driving those numbers down, because transit workers are defenseless. They're sitting there as public servants, doing their job, serving the community, making a difference for all Coloradans. They can't get up and leave, they can't retreat, they're not allowed to bring any defensive weapons with them, and they're subject to assault, bias, hate, and just harassment over and over and over again. And that's impacting ridership, which we saw ridership go down during COVID, and it has not returned to where it used to be. And that's hurting all of us in Colorado. So I think around crime and public safety, there's a lot we can do. So it's about enforcing the rule of law, which I've done throughout my career, and I've handled major and horrific cases as a prosecutor and as the district attorney for Boulder County. But I started my career in New York City. I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. I'm the grandson of 4 Irish immigrants who came over and settled in Brooklyn. That's where I was born. And after going to community college and putting myself through school by loading trucks at UPS, going on to graduate from law school, I went back to New York City after law school and worked at the Manhattan DA's office. So from 97 through 2007, every day on public transit, and I did not own a car, which I know speaks to you, Chris Nicholson. But we didn't own a car, and then my wife and I had twins, and we invested $1 and bought my parents' car because they had medical issues, and that was the hand-me-down that we had for a couple of years, because we still took public transit everywhere we went. And then I moved to Colorado to work for the Attorney General's office. So when you think about having the experience to run that office, I actually worked in that office. That's what brought us to Colorado. And I moved to Colorado to run the Attorney General's wrongful conviction program to identify wrongful convictions in the state of Colorado, which led to, for example, the exoneration of Robert Dewey, who served 18 years in state prison for a crime he did not commit. My work led to his exoneration, but also the successful identification, arrest, and conviction of the actual killer who's now in state prison. And I was put in charge of the Attorney General's criminal section. That entire time, I was taking the bus from Boulder down to Denver every day for work, and every day back, and riding my bike between my house and the bus. And when the transit is reliable, it's attractive to so many people. And when you know this, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we can do a lot better to build active ridership for RTD and to help our environment, help traffic, help workers, people with disabilities, as the earlier speaker talked about. I'm absolutely committed to doing that as your next Attorney General. Part of what we need to do on public safety is not just enforce the law, that has to be a part of it, but also build better systems to support those who are struggling. So we rank 48th in the nation for mental health treatment being available in the community. We see that failure on our streets, in homeless encampments, and sometimes in the justice system. So that's why I started the first mental health diversion program in the state of Colorado when I became district attorney in 2018. It's been incredibly successful. We have a 92% success rate. So instead of people cycling in and out of the jail over and over again on low-level offenses, we connect them with treatment and medication and help them get on a better track. Our juvenile diversion program, we divert now successfully more than 50% of all kids out of the justice system before they even start going through the justice system, to lessen the criminal justice impact on their lives. So I really believe we have to build better systems within the justice system, but we also have to enforce the law along the way. You can't simply say, let's take away consequences and let transit workers be trapped out there on buses and trains being assaulted. So it's about those things at the same time. And just quickly on environmental issues, with the federal government rolling back the EPA, the Attorney General will have to play an even bigger role on civil and criminal enforcement of environmental offenses. As the head of the criminal section of the AG's office, I oversaw the environmental crime unit there. There's a lot more we can be doing on the environmental side, including holding corporate polluters responsible, making sure that we're doing everything we can for low-income communities, particularly communities of color, that too often are being victimized by polluters and they're not being held accountable. So for example, just speaking directly here, CDPHE fined Suncor $10 million last year for a host of violations. That fine should have been $110 million. It's $10 million is a drop in the bucket for them. They were contaminating communities for a long time, and that went unchecked. It's also about protecting Colorado's water and beautiful outdoors, and I'm absolutely committed to that. And then when it comes to some of the issues we've seen with the federal government, I launched an immigrant protection program in my office in 2018. We've been doing Know Your Rights trainings for the last 7 years, and now I'm doing it on the campaign trail. Wherever I go, we offer them to groups of community members. Because the fight is on, and I feel compelled to get out there and actually do this work outside of Boulder County as well. So for example, people should be able to come to the courthouses, victims, witnesses, and defendants to have justice done without fear they will be picked up by ICE. And right now, people are terrified. And I'll just tell you a couple of, time is short. I'll tell you, as Attorney General, I will fight to eliminate private prisons in the state of Colorado. We should not have I feel very strongly about this. To me, it's outrageous. We should never have profit in the justice system, in any part of it. And it's unacceptable and un-American. And I will continue to scream for it and fight for those private prisons to be eliminated. Also, ICE agents should not be wearing masks. I think it undercuts the trust and confidence that people have in law enforcement. And I've worked with law enforcement for 28 years. I've been a prosecutor. I've worked on horrific and serious cases throughout my entire career. So the Pearl Street firebombing, just the most recent one. King Soopers mass murder, I handled that trial myself. Back in New York, I handled a lot of cases that were really serious, and officers and detectives never wore masks. There's no reason for ICE to be wearing masks, except that they're instilling terror in the people they're encountering. And we see people being plucked off the streets, kidnapped, and deported without due process. And as Attorney General, I will not stand for that. And we're going to make sure that we fight against it. And I'll say one final thing, and then if we have time for questions, James. One of the cases I remember most in New York was a guy who was actually affectionately referred to as a transit buff. But he would steal buses and trains around all the time. So by the time I got a case with him, he already had 15 prior convictions, all related to transit. In the case I got with him, he had a subway uniform on, transit work uniform, walked on, and in New York City, it's such a massive system, of course, when they're switching and shift changes, they just give a wave, he walks right on the subway, starts driving the subway. There's 1,000 people on the subway train. I had never thought about the number of people on the subway, even though I was on it every day, until I got this case. And he mistakenly hit the emergency brake, and it came to a jarring halt. And then the funny part of the story was when he came off of the subway car, when they got into the station, there was another transit worker there who recognized him from all the posters they had up, and the locker rooms and the hallways saying, "Watch out for this guy." And 2 police officers respond to the call, and they're like, "Hey, someone called and said there's a guy impersonating a transit worker here," and the defendant was like, "No, he's heading to the train." And they're like, "Oh, you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And the other guy's like, So I prosecuted that case. This was a long time ago, but I have, throughout my career, been a lawyer and a leader for many, many years. And the challenges we face in this country right now are too great for this to be a learn-on-the-job experience. And experience matters. So being a lawyer, being a leader, having a proven track record of success in fighting the most important fights is what we need. When you go into court against Donald Trump, it can't be your first time walking into a court. So I'm running for Attorney General because I feel really passionate about the role of the Attorney General, especially now. I'm not term limited, and I don't need a new job. But when my wife and I sat down with our 17-year-old twins, our daughter and our son, to tell them I was going to run for Attorney General, I said, I just want you to know, it's going to impact our lives a lot. You're not going to see me very much. I just want to make sure you're okay with that. My daughter said, we're living through a crisis in this country. If you don't do this just so we can hang out more on the weekends, we're all going to regret this. Have to do this. So that's why I'm here. And I'm all in. And I would love to be the next Attorney General. I'll stop there and take any questions you have.
Well, we're honored to have you. I will say one more thing before I'll turn it over to everyone else, is that there were two really cool ideas that we chewed on the night that we met. The first was talking about how right now fines that are made on the RTD system frequently don't make it back to RTD. The other issue, right, is things that the legislature, that your office can help with the AG's office can help with to protect riders from violence on trains. So can you kind of walk the group through, obviously very, very high level, because we've, I think, got various levels of legal training here, of where is it going to take legislation and where is it going to take a different application or perhaps a different approach from the AG's office in kind of working on these two ideas?
So on both of these, I think we need some level of legislative action. So what I talked about fines is that, you know, if someone breaks the window of your apartment, it's very likely part of the sentence if the person is convicted is that they have to pay you for the damage they caused. That money should be going back to RTD. When it's fines or damage being caused, it shouldn't be going into some other government coffer. So I'd want to see that money going back to RTD. I think that's fair and that's right. So even for people who are not paying their fare, if they end up being cited for that, those fines should go back to RTD and to the overall well-being of the ridership and the transit workers. So I think that's a really important piece of it. And then also increasing the penalties for assaults on transit workers and possibly even those who are riding on transit. I was on the phone with my wife when I was walking in here and I said, she's like, what are you going to talk about? I said, I just feel so strongly, as you know. And she's like, yeah, she goes, people need to read that sign in the front of the bus. Like, it's only that simple. Like, but it's also about enforcing what it says on the sign, right? And we're leaving riders, but also especially the drivers and the workers exposed to violence. So I think it's about increasing the penalty and then making sure that transit police have the resources and staff to actually get out there in a timely fashion and enforce the laws.
Sure. We'll open it up to the room. Ed?
Yeah. The freight railroads are largely regulated by the federal government. What, if anything, can the state attorney general do to regulate the growing number of oil trains going along the Colorado River and down the Front Range?
Good question. First of all, I love your shirt, by the way. So they are regulated by the federal government in large part, but I think continuing to develop clean energy and better technology is a state responsibility as well. And there are things we can do in place in terms of incentives for environmental enhancements that will allow us to continue developing, even at a time where the White House is not particularly inclined to develop new technology. We shouldn't stop what we're doing. We should look to the fact that we're going to have a new president in the White House in 2+ years. And I think we have to continue developing that technology. So I'm a big supporter of what we've done in Colorado the last few years.
But you won't be able to stop or regulate those trains from potentially derailing and have tremendous environmental damage to either the Colorado River or to the Boulder watershed.
So if they are committing an environmental violation,
Which they're not.
Right. But so, for example, it depends on the circumstances, but the gold mine down in Durango, that was determined to be a violation. So there are actions that can be taken if they're playing outside the lines. It really depends on. But you're right. If a train just happens to go off the tracks, it wouldn't necessarily be a violation. It would depend on the exact circumstances.
June?
So I would love to ask a question about Tabor Foundation v. Aspen and the brewing ballot fights regarding transportation initiatives and transit. But I think I got asked a question that's a little more personal. So sure. I'm trans. Basically my entire community is trans. Like most of the cis people that I know in real life are here in the Capitol. The Trump administration, a lot of their sort of lackeys are starting to call trans people just terrorists, right, for existing. They're targeting our healthcare, targeting our passports, our identification. You know, I didn't travel internationally this year, even though I could have, because I was worried I was going to get stopped at the border and accused of doing fraud, because my passport matches my gender identity. And now we're seeing Congress looking at a lot of online platforms that my community uses to sort of organize and stay in touch and make sure that we're all taken care of, which don't serve as spaces for obviously dangerous violent radicalization and all that sort of stuff. So given the sort of broad-based attack where it seems trans people seem to be at the root of all society's problems according to the people in charge, what can you actually do against that? Like, what are you as Attorney General planning to do to defend my community, given that we're, 1% of the population, and if you really wanted to, it's not that hard to throw something across, right?
So 3 things. And first, I would start by saying the director of Rocky Mountain Equality is Marty Moore, and she represents the LGBTQ+ community members. And if you go on her Facebook tonight, and you'll see her most recent post says, "I've never supported a candidate before. I've never been involved in a campaign, but I'm the one that she's supporting." And she's actively supporting the campaign because the work we've been doing together since 2018. We launched the Hate Crimes Initiative in Boulder County because the list that Marty had of hate crimes committed against members of the community was this long, and the police and the DA's office had a list that was short. And it's because the law enforcement agencies were not doing, prosecutors were not being trained, hadn't developed rapport, they weren't able to relate to or build trust. That's all changed in Boulder County. We now have what's viewed as a model in the metro area for hate crimes prevention and our response to hate crimes. Including when Trump was reelected, I asked Marty, what can I do? And she's like, you need to send a letter to the trans community members, tell them that you're gonna fight for them and stand with them. And that letter went out that same day. So it's about hate crimes work, and the AG can take the work that I've been doing. As AG, I'll take it statewide. Second is standing and fighting for gender affirmative care, which has been under threat because of the Trump administration. And making sure that the funding remains in place. And AG Weiser brought a lawsuit on this, and I strongly support what he's done on that. I think it was the absolute right thing, and I'll continue that lawsuit if I have the honor of being elected Attorney General. So that's the second thing. So it's about, first it's about safety around hate crimes. Second, it's about the gender affirmative care. Third, it's about raising awareness throughout the community that we will not tolerate hate. It goes back to the prevention side. And I think it's, in some communities, it's easier, such as Boulder County, than other communities. We've been really successful in developing better systems and better culture as a result of those efforts. I'm deeply committed to all 3 of those things.
I also asked about data privacy, and everything we're seeing this administration doing is going after hospitals, trying to get medical records, violating HIPAA. It looks like, if they start designating trans discourse service, for example, as like, I don't know, terror cells, I don't know what the federal government's gonna try to do. How are you gonna stop that, right?
One thing we can do is the only thing that's working right now, which is taking Trump to court. That's the only thing that's working. So a number of the AGs, including AG Weiser, took the Trump administration in court to protect people's data, and that's still being litigated in federal court. I will definitely be doing the same thing. Because the federal government should not be able to take people's data and use it that way. I agree 100% with you, and I promise you I'll do that.
What's your philosophy of balancing, federal litigation versus the state issues? What's your philosophy on how you're going to balance that? You're obviously going to be AG if you get elected to a very tumultuous time.
So 2 things. First, I think that's such an important question because the AG's office is the largest law office in the state of Colorado. There are 400 attorneys there. That's why experience as a leader matters. But it's not unlimited. You can't take on every case in Colorado and every case against the federal government. So it's about leading with integrity and deciding when to take on the federal government when they're actually acting against the law and hurting Colorado. So for example, birthright citizenship, seeking to revoke birthright citizenship would hurt so many people in the state of Colorado. We have to take that to court, and that's the only thing that stopped that executive order of Trump from going into effect. Same when they seek to cut off funding to Colorado because they're angry, Trump's angry at a policy or position that we have in Colorado. They seek to cut off funding. We are doing the right thing when we take Trump to court because at a very basic level, as you know, the president does not have the power to cut off funding. That's the power of Congress, not the president, so it violates due process and violates the Constitution. But I want to be really careful about only doing it when it's required. So something you'll never see me do is you'll never see me say, I took Donald Trump to court yesterday, will you donate $5 to my campaign today? Because first of all, that's not how it should work. And second of all, I think people lose confidence and trust in my integrity as Attorney General if that's how I'm tying those 2 together. And every time I take Trump to court, or whoever the next president is, I'll explain to the people of Colorado, here's why I have to do this. Here's why it's the right thing to do. And I think that communication and that honesty matters. I think Phil Weiser standing and fighting for Colorado it's absolutely required because we're living through scary and challenging times. And that has to continue, and I'm ready to do that day 1.
Time for 2 more. Patricia?
Thanks, James. So we just had a conversation about like paratransit, ADA, and civil rights, and like so Colorado's like Attorney General doesn't have like a civil rights division, in part because statute, the law doesn't suggest that it should, but other states do, and I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about where the AG's office, you know, and of course legislature would have to enact that statute, you know, might have an opportunity to work on civil rights issues within our state. I'll just kind of leave it open-ended. I know you know what I'm talking about, and I'd just be interested if you think that might be a path forward.
Yes, definitely, and it goes to priorities of the office. And that's why we have to be really careful about what actions we're taking against the federal government, because there are things we need to do here in Colorado, civil rights being right there at the top of the list. And I do think the AG's office has started to do more of that type of work, even without having a civil rights unit. So when you look at the pattern and practice action against, for example, the Aurora Police Department, I think of that as a civil rights action. But, or the lawsuit against the baker, for example, I think of that as a civil rights type of action. So they do a lot of that type of work. They should have a civil rights unit. I agree with you, and I'd like to see that happen. Along with a conviction integrity unit, so we have a statewide entity to look for conviction integrity issues around the state of Colorado, and a unit that helps smaller jurisdiction with major cases. So there's a number of different units I'd like to see the AG's office develop, but civil rights is right there. And they're already doing a lot of that work. Phil Weiser's been dedicated to it. But I think you're right that it would require legislative action, and I would definitely see that.
Last one, let's give to Ian, because you've had your hand up for a while.
I have kind of a two-parter. One, have you taken any corporate PAC money? And two, how would you distinguish yourself from your primary opponent, which would be Jenna Griswold?
So no, I've not taken any corporate PAC money, and I don't plan to take any corporate PAC money. How would I distinguish myself from Jenna Griswold? A number of ways. First, I have experience as a lawyer. I have experience as a leader of large law offices. And that matters. You know this in your own work, whatever you do. When you're supervising people for the first time, when you're supervising people for the 10th time, there's a difference between number 1 and number 10. And when you're trying to inspire people to do the right thing, do justice, and operate with integrity, that experience matters a lot. And also picking what cases to take to court and how to fight to uphold the rule of law is absolutely critical. So being a lawyer and being a leader, and also always operating with integrity. I will just say, I think it's really important that the next Attorney General not be hyper-partisan. That the decisions have to be made based on what's right. And often it's going to be, let's fight Trump. But how we say that and how we do that, for example, that will really determine who trusts government, who trusts democracy. And we need to restore trust in our democracy right now. And I feel really strongly about this. It's why when I'm in Boulder County and the Boulder County Republicans, which we do have, by the way, Boulder County Republicans invite me to come talk at their meetings, and there's 200, I was surprised. I go, because as district attorney, I should be there, but I should also be invited. I'll give you a great example. So Tina Peters was the county clerk out in Grand Junction, Mesa County, and it was discovered that she had engaged in election fraud. The district attorney there is a Republican, Dan Rubenstein. He recognized how complex that case is and that would have statewide ramifications. He called Phil Weiser, Democrat. Dan Rubenstein doesn't make that call if he doesn't trust that Phil Weiser is going to do the right thing. Phil Weiser doesn't answer that call if he doesn't trust that Dan Rubenstein is someone who's dedicated to doing the right thing. And together, those two offices teamed up to prosecute Tina Peters, and now she's in the state prison. We have Donald Trump threatening Colorado with harsh measures if she's not released immediately, which is what I feel like I read in the newspaper about third world countries when I was a kid. A president threatening consequences of someone, a crony is not released from prison. We cannot accept that. I will always fight against it. But the point being, two people of integrity leading offices, different parties, they probably disagree on a host of other issues, but on that they were united. But that takes trust and that takes experience. And that's what I've been doing my entire career, which is why when I launched the campaign, I reached out. There are 23 elected DAs in the state of Colorado. I reached out to all 22, and one of the first ones on the Republican side I spoke to is Ann Kelly, who's down in San Luis Valley. And she said, I want to endorse you, but you don't want the R on your website. And I paused for a moment. I said, you know what, if you're endorsing me because you think I have the integrity and I'm going to fight for what's right, I'd be honored to have your endorsement.
first of a bunch of Republican DAs who endorsed me. And it's about standing and fighting for what's right. And that's what I'm always going to do.
Terrific. Well, Richard, I think there was one more question.
Yeah, I have one last question. It's quite a difficult safety and security subject. You might be aware of a recent incident in Charlotte, a shocking incident where a girl was stabbed on a light rail, and the video, I think, is out on the internet. There's obviously a racial element. Bits of the media obviously pick this story up. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the fact that this particular individual did what I think a lot of us is our worst nightmare. You know, you sit down on public transit, it's a low back seat. I don't think any of us can defend against an attacker that does that. It doesn't matter how big or how strong you think you are. But then the other thing that came out is this individual had 14, you know, he'd been brought in. Now, I'm not saying he's been brought in for violent crime 14 times, but there were 14 booking photos released of this individual. He said he had a history of mental illness, how I think he said he was hearing voices, he felt he was, there was clearly some mental issues going on. So, what do we do? How do you reassure a public that is, this incidents like this have happened in Denver? How do you reassure the public that we're doing everything to keep public transit a safe space?
Thanks for sharing that question. I do think we're so exposed and so vulnerable when we're on transit. So when I used to work as a paralegal before going to law school, and I would take the Long Island Railroad from my parents' house into Manhattan every day, and late at night to get home. And that same year, someone went on the Long Island Railroad and just went down the middle aisle of the car, just shooting people in their seats. And it was terrifying to think about. Like, you have nowhere to go. You're absolutely trapped. And that's what I thought of when I saw that video online. There's a couple things that I think are really important. So first is, ideally we would have mental health treatment that would prevent this from ever happening. That's what we need. That's what we need to build to. That's the better future. When we talk about building a better future, that's the better future for Colorado and for this country. But until we get there, the rule of law has to be enforced. We can't say, wow, ideally someday we'll have this, and in the meantime we're not going to do anything about the 14 other incidents that have taken place. So whether it's more serious consequences, but also mental health treatment being included as part of those sentences, I think that has to happen, and in Colorado we're failing in that regard right now. We're also trespass notices, so you can't go on public transit, where we have that for stores, for example, and businesses, where if someone goes to Target and they commit a number of crimes, you can trespass someone from that. But I think it's all about building better mental health treatment. The exact case example of that is one we had in Boulder, where a guy was camping out alongside Boulder Creek, stolen bike parts and a stolen bike there. And no one did anything. He's just camping out there. That's a violation of the law, and he has stolen stuff there. And sure enough, this woman came by, and she saw her stolen bike laying there. I actually went home that night and asked my twins, my daughter and son, this question, which is very revealing of their personalities. I said, if you saw your stolen bike, what would you do? My son said, I would creep away quietly while using my phone to call 911. He's hiding while watching the bike. And his sister looks at him just with this incredulous look on her face. She's like, I'd go over and be like, hey buddy, that's my bike. I grab the bike. And that's what this woman did, that's what I would do. And the guy punched her in the face and broke her nose. We ended up securing the maximum sentence on that case, 16 years in state prison. And that's the right thing. But I'm not going to tell you it's a success. Because in my book, to be honest, we failed all these opportunities before that to get him to a better place and get him on track. So we have to build a better system, especially around mental health, but also enforce the law.
Terrific. Well, I think this is a really, really important conversation to have, and to the extent that we can be a part of future conversations, right, in terms of transit that intersects with the law, would love to keep these conversations going, because I think this is so incredibly important. So thank you so much for spending your evening with us. This is a really, really important conversation.
And I left business cards and envelopes over on the table there, and I'd love to hear from you if you're willing to volunteer for the campaign or support the campaign, or stuff on social media and follow us on social media, that'd be great. And my email address is on the card. I answer every email I get. So if I didn't get to a question or you want to follow up on anything, I really encourage you to reach out. I just really appreciate you, James, and everybody inviting me in to have this conversation. And I look forward to working together going forward. So thank you so much.
All right.
Oh yeah, sure. We're literally going to blast through our projects. There's probably only one really big
And then,
one.
yeah, then we're off to
And then
grab
we're
a
off
beer.
to the drink. So let's go. Not that. Oh, we didn't.
We gotta go.
Oh,
this is not been updated.
We'll do it backwards.
All right.
Okay, let's go.
All right, Joe first.
Alright, thank you.
Okay. By the way, who recognizes the little icon on the top left really fast?
So as we've been tracking, RTD doesn't have a full system-wide map for buses. They only do that for rail, which further exacerbates some of the perception differences between what a rail network serves and what a bus network serves. And our very own Daryl Abruzzo, my apologies if I've mispronounced your name if you're listening, he's put together an absolutely incredible, highly polished, beautiful piece of design that shows this isn't impossible. This is doable. It's doable to make it look incredible, to make it highly useful. Call on RTD to either reach out to him and see what it takes to license this thing, because it's really, really well done, or to start engaging in efforts of increasing their ability to communicate the network connectivity of their system to the public by starting similar efforts to this. But for now, you need reference to a static map that covers pretty much the whole territory. Use this, reach out to Daryl, tell him how amazing this work is. This is all unpaid. We're all doing this on the side, and that's an incredible piece of design.
On this note too, I want to say, if RTD tells you they can't make a static map, you can find one in Denver that's still up at Tattered Covers Cafe. They have it hanging out there. You can go see it. It's not current, it's not up to date, but they've done it before, so certainly they can do it again.
There's one in the East Metro garage as well.
Yep.
And it is most of the way complete. There's a Boulder Longmont inset that I think is still in work, but incredible work along the way. Next up is the downtown bus plan. So James has been leading the charge to bring in all sorts of stakeholders around the city and around the region to talk about reorienting buses that run through downtown on a set of consolidated trunks to make transfers easier, to make the system easier to understand for everyday people using RTD, people out of town, and just generally improve the quality of transit connections through downtown Denver. This has had a ton of momentum as different groups are brought in as stakeholders, and then including most recently discussions with CFO Kelly Mackey and some of the staff that she works with. One of the core revelations that we've been learning from this is part of the reason that a lot of these buses can't serve Civic Center and Union Station both on the same trip is the layover space at both of those locations. This is separate from the standard bus gates where you would order a light as a passenger. They also need space for the buses to basically be parked for 10 minutes to an hour for drivers to swap, for drivers to take their breaks. And that's going to be a piece to develop here in order to create the capacity that we need for this plan to be fully implemented.
No, with the pickleball.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good news is it's not a stake to the heart, right? I mean, like, this is, maybe there's 3 buses that we propose going to Civic Center that, may have to wait for a little bit more capacity agreements with the city. But what's terrific is that the, impressions a couple of the planners we've talked to at some of these public events have been positive about it, which is so cool. So I go.
Cool. So taking a slightly larger lens, the metro area bus plan, something we covered last meeting, is it's progressing and something we still want to get folks involved in. I think I chatted with a couple people earlier today about this and even before today. But yeah, we're progressing with getting all the data to actually go about and figure out route geometry. Our high level goal is to have this plan done by end of year so that we can go back to Daryl and trouble him to redo his whole map again. And then we are hoping to start some preliminary conversations with board members, with members of like Dottie and other agencies sooner rather than later, because we don't need to have a 100% map to start talking to people. And at a very high level, it's the three things, right? The route geometry, what physical changes do we want to make buses move faster, whether that's, where do we want to focus on bus lanes, where do we want on signal priority, where do we want better bus stops? And then beyond that, what are these other quality of life improvements? Like, we talk about bus route, we talk about, tap to pay, but what are those other soft infrastructure improvements that we want to make to make riding a bus feel more pleasant? So if any of these things seem interesting to you, again, feel free to connect with me. We're going to restart the cadence of meeting on a bi-weekly basis to start pushing this along. And before I hand over, again, big shout out to all the contributors so far. So Maitri, Keith, Joe, Cody have already contributed a ton of work to this project, and we would not be where we are without them. And there's still a lot of space and time for more folks to contribute their knowledge, expertise. If you want to practice presenting, if you want to practice wrangling with data, this is a great way to get involved. I'd say at this juncture, probably the biggest endeavor amongst GDT's projects. It's the longest term project we have right now.
And I want to shout out the huge amount of effort that Keith has put into proposing a lot of just a broad rerouted route geometries across the whole metro area, basically. Bus routes that I never thought about or knew about before.
Don't talk to me unless you know where the 133 is.
So he's done a really great job putting some proposals out there on our map, and you can find the links in the Slack. We have a channel. Come reach out to any of us if you want to comment on it and look at it.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Really great. Welcome Corridor Vision. It's nearly done. I think go on final review. That's about it.
Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. So we are in a really interesting place right now, right, where several mega developments are moving forward, right? Most recently with the announcement of the Burnham move, right, with the idea that this mega stadium is going to be built right south of downtown. As a consequence of this, right, as we also see the Ball Arena redevelopment moving forward, it's going to be time for us to have something coherent to say about the rail side, right? Is that we've been trying to focus on what we would describe as the pieces that RTD could tweak within their financial means. But when we talk about perhaps building a massive stadium, getting the land use wrong or not leaving in enough room for a few more pairs of rails, right, to get front range directly to the site. Also, in the distant future, talking about, well, what is it actually going to take? If we are going to be able to plan for the future, what is it going to take to actually double, triple, or quadruple the mode share of transit, right? We would, I think, have a consensus in this group that rail is going to be a big part of that. This is not going to be a let's just run buses everywhere, because buses have fundamental limitations in how fast they go and what their capacity is. If we're going to talk about transforming Denver, rail is going to be a part of it. So if you feel passionately about this subject, right, you'll notice that the lines on this map are a little different. The G line goes a little bit further, the W line goes a little bit further. We are talking about something that is going to hopefully be closer to an S-Bahn. Now, there's the here to there, right? There's a reason that we're starting incrementally. There's a reason we're starting with the pieces that RTE can afford, that the city, that the state can do in a Tabor state, right? But if this is your bread and butter, if you are passionate about rail nerds, rail maps and stuff like that, and you want to be a part of this, there's room for many, many more voices. So join us. And that concludes the programming for this evening. Let's all enjoy some conversation. Let's get some beer. Thanks for coming.